Good morning. Today we're going to look at Genesis chapter 29 and 30, which is this very fascinating story between Jacob, who goes to find a wife. He is told to go amongst his people, to his mother's brother, and find a wife for himself amongst his own people. Now, what happens is kind of a bizarre story, but he sees Laban's daughter Rachel, and she's so attractive to him that he's willing to work 7 years for her hand in marriage. He does this, and on the wedding night, and it's dark and there wasn't lights like we have now, Laban takes his older daughter Leah and puts her in the tent with Jacob. And when Jacob awakes in the morning and sees that it's not Rachel, the one he's worked for, he tells Laban, "Why did you deceive me?" And Laban concocts the story, and maybe it's partly true, that we don't give our younger daughter's hand in marriage before the older. But notice here, he gives both of his daughters to Jacob. And then later, the wives will start to give their maidservants as wives to Jacob because they're in a competition to have kids. Now, the Mormons and even some other Christian groups see polygamy as kind of a biblical standard or mandate, or just simply something that is allowable since it was in the Old Testament. But we should state, especially from this story, look at what happens, right? Look at the competition between these women. Is this healthy? Is this what relationships are supposed to be? No. God created them in the beginning, male and female. The two shall become one flesh. But in this society, in this patriarchal society, that they took multiple wives, and in some sense, that without the man's provision in this type of society, many women would starve or be without. So there was a certain logic or rhyme or reason to it in the ancient world. But this wasn't something God mandated. And we could see this by the two women competing to have kids. Rachel can't have them, and even though Jacob loves her more, she was his first choice. Leah bears him these sons. So then Rachel's like, "Well, take my maidservant." And then Leah stops having children, and she's like, "Well, take my maidservant." And all this jealousy and bickering occurs really because, it was never supposed to be like that. He was supposed to have Rachel as his wife, and that was it. But Laban pulls a fast one, then each of the women pull a fast one, and it's probably a tough relationship to work out, right? Jacob was probably a guy that all the women were very jealous over, and sometimes guys look at that and be like, "Hey, well, that's I've heard Mormons say, hey, it's better when the woman is competing for the man." But again, this is not how it's supposed to be. I don't know that anyone wants those type of conflicts in their life. So we always must remember as we look at the Bible that it's not necessarily a prescriptive book. There are prescriptions, there's commands given to us, but it's a descriptive book as well. It describes what occurs, and many of the things that occur are not prescriptive for us, like cheating people out of birthrights or taking multiple wives. But my main point I want to tie it all to is notice how they're all trying to somehow help God. Right? They're all trying to say they want Jacob to love them more, or they're trying to bear more children because they want the lineage to pass through them, and they're all trying to, out of their own work, bring about some goodness. Now, oftentimes, God can bring about good things out of messes, right? But we gotta stop with this thinking, and oftentimes, this is what occurs, that God needs a little help. Because Rachel ends up having her own daughter, or her own child, okay? So Rachel has her own child, but she gave her maidservant as a wife to Jacob because she couldn't conceive. So she jumped the gun. We've seen this before, right? With Abraham and Sarah. And then you get Ishmael and Hagar into this mix that should have never been there. In God's providence, he works even through this. But if we learn one thing, right? It's trust in the Lord's timing, not our own. Let us not make the situation more complicated, and let us not try to think we somehow have to help God's promises. Let us just trust and obey today, wherever you're at in your marriage, in your life, in your workplace. Trust that God is going to bring you through it. Go to him in prayer and allow him to work. Don't try to help him out by your own conniving and working behind the scenes. I mean, be obedient, work hard, do what you need to do, but trust in the Lord and do right by him. Have a blessed day. We'll see you guys Monday.